Back Wednesday means it's time for Cooking with Rania. She's on vacation this week, so instead we're thrilled to welcome our next guest. Chef Hoover works for Rania's Catering and is a bit of a beer aficionado, would you say? He recently worked with Mindful Brewing to create a unique brew, and he's here today to share some beer-inspired recipes. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Let's start off talking about the beer brewing process itself and how you got started in all of this.
I'm a pretty avid home brewer.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for probably about 5-6 years now. And being a chef, there's a lot of similarities with dealing with flavors and whatnot when you're thinking about making beer also. I hooked up with the guys at Mindful Brewing because they're really close to my shop at work. And we decided that we were going to make a beer together. And the brewers down there, Marcus Cox and Nick Jones, they both are a pretty good brewing team.
And we're showing some pictures.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Tell us what we're looking at.
So this is a mushroom beer that we made.
Okay.
This is a dehydrator that I built to dehydrate 50 pounds of mushrooms that we needed to make this beer. And that's some of them. And then we powdered those, and those actually went into the beer. And then
the contraption looks a little crazy.
Yeah, it's like a baker's speed rack, and I fashioned like 2 fans up to it. Like commercial food dehydrators still aren't that big, so I needed to make something a lot bigger because 50 pounds of mushrooms is a lot.
Now, did you come up with the idea for the flavor, or was that more of a collaboration between?
It was a collaboration. Marcus, the brewer, wanted to do something with mushrooms, so then we just had a bunch of conversations about it and what we wanted to have, and what we wanted was a beer that went with good food. A beer that you could, instead of open up a nice bottle of red wine, put this beer on the table, do that. So the beer doesn't actually taste like overtly like mushrooms. It gives it like a savory quality, earthiness kind of, and it makes you, it kind of excites your taste buds so that you can kind of taste food better when you have it. It has like a acidic quality to it also. He made some malt vinegar that from some of their beer, because malt vinegar is made from beer. It has acetic or acetobacter in it.
Yeah.
The acetobacter takes the alcohol and turns it into acetic acid, so that's how vinegar is made. So he made some of that, and we steeped some rosemary in it when it was pasteurized, because you have to pasteurize it before you put it into the beer, or it'll eat up all the beer.
Gotcha.
And so that little bit of rosemary gives a little herbal quality. The yeast that's used, it's called a bière de garde, which is a French style of beer.
Okay.
It's very similar to Belgian styles. And
let me ask you this. As a chef, how much fun is it to kind of be able to play with something like beer? I mean, it seems like so many people are doing the home brews and getting into this.
And beer has a bigger variety than wine.
Yeah.
Because you can use more ingredients. Wine, you have grape juice and yeast.
Right. But like you said, a lot of people don't even think to pair beer with like a nice dinner.
Right. And that's something that people can do and should do. There's a lot of styles that work great with food. I mean, this is one, and this is why we created this. So what I'm going to do real quick here is I roasted a rack of lamb.
Okay.
So I have this here. We're going to make a pan sauce. This is the pan that I put it in.
Okay. What did you put in the pan already?
Just I had just a little extra butter.
Okay.
Some of this is the fat that came from the rack itself as it was roasting. And I provided recipes for the rack and the sauce and everything, even though we're kind of glossing over a little bit of this. So we're just going to saute this in a little butter. Add just a pinch of rosemary.
Okay. And if you're not a fan of rosemary, can you use something else, or is that?
You could put a sprig of thyme in there and take it back out. You don't need the herbs at all. A lot of people overdo it with the rosemary. That's why a lot of people don't like it, because all they've ever had is just rosemary overkill. So I just put a tiny little bit in there because it doesn't need that much. I'm just going to put a splash of this beer. When you start cooking beer down, boiling it and whatnot, any hop content, sorry about that, little splatter. Any hop content that's in there already is going to continue to get more bitter, because that's what makes the beer bitter. So that's going to happen with this. So we're just going to use a tiny little bit. Put a little bit of stock in here, and then this is just going to reduce down.
And how long do you let that go?
We'll let this reduce for just like 1 minute here, and then I'll put a little butter in it and thicken it up, and then I'll go right on here.
So, I mean, this is a pretty easy sauce that you can make at home with probably ingredients that you have minus the beer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could substitute just about any Belgian style of beer. They're very closely related. Like, this is one of the only truly French styles of beer.
Okay.
But it's from that region that's very close to Belgium.
And why would you say that type of beer in particular is the best to use for something like this?
Because it has that earthiness to it, it's
Okay.
the yeast that provides a lot of the flavor, especially
Okay.
in Belgian French beers. The yeast is going to provide a ton of like spiciness, earthiness, a little bit of fruitiness sometimes, depending
Yeah.
on how it's fermented. So a lot of really interesting flavors that work really well with food and for pairing and for cooking with food.
And probably just stronger flavor too, would you say?
Yes, yes, definitely more interesting and different than a lot of American or British or German styles.
All right, so once this gets going, what's next? You can already smell it. It smells so good.
So then I'm just going to take this off the heat.
All right.
I'm going to stir. This is going to be a little bit thinner than I intended just because of time constraints
Sure.
here.
So you're really trying to get all the bits off the bottom then too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you scrape all this up. That's called the fond,
Okay.
F-O-N-D. And the acid in the beer helps release that from
Break
the
that
can.
up a little bit.
And then we would just take this and...
Now, could you use this particular sauce on a different type of meat too?
Oh, absolutely. This is pretty standard for if you're roasting any meat. You would take, like, even your Thanksgiving turkey. This is
Oh,
basically
wow.
what you're
Okay.
doing. You're taking that pan, draining off the fat,
Sure.
scraping those bits up with maybe a little bit of wine, add some stock to it, and you make your gravy. This is just like a simple, quick pan gravy, basically, is what's done here.
All right. Well, it smells good, looks good. We're going to try it in the commercial break coming up. We'll be right back, though, with more beer-inspired recipes from Chef Aaron Hoover. Stay with us.